Blog Talk Radio.
Aziz. Aziz.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. This is Crystal with Black by God, and I'm not sure if my co-host John is on the line or not. We've been trying to figure this back end out for a while now. John, can you hear us? John, are you there? I think I'll just keep on talking until John calls in, and anyone else is also welcome to call in to this live, meaning like anybody that's listening right now could hear me if they were dialed into the blackbygod.com Blog Talk Radio site. So listen, folks, I just try to show up here every Sunday to create a platform for folks to connect and talk. Been very fortunate that John Kamet-Shabazz L has been holding it down, co-hosting with me for the past 6 weeks. We've been putting out content here on this platform. So I'm going to try to give John another call here, and then hopefully he can hear us, and we'll...
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 68175382250.
All right, folks, I'll just hang out and wait for John to call in. Brother Benny might call in. Sister JT might call in. Otherwise, I'm just going to be sitting on here talking until somebody shows up. And you know what? Somebody always shows up. I was sending out an email. Let's see. I think here's John coming in. John, are you there?
Peace and blessings. Yes, I am, Crystal. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're live. So nice for you to enter. Welcome.
Okay, thanks. Good to be here again this Sunday, and we're going to go over the past shows today, right? Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I just titled this show Open Mic, so it's an open idea mic. We can talk about the past shows. Maybe maybe some folks will join us. If not, let's just chop it up about what we've learned, because I think we've covered a lot of content, but sometimes it's difficult in those spaces to kind of just start to unpack it. So, what's your favorite show, John?
Well, I gotta be honest. I like the show that we did with. I like the show that we did with on Ice Cube's Contract for Black America, where you linked us up with Benny, where Benny had already introduced that to some local politicians in Charleston, and I really appreciated that show, because I was slow, as I recall admitting, I was slow getting on to Ice Cube's Contract for Black America. I kind of disregarded it. But then to come to find out that somebody right here in the state had already seen the value of what Ice Cube was doing and took it upon himself to be bold enough to present it to local politicians, I like that. So, Benny, if you're listening, you hear this show later, much love to you, bro. You know what I'm saying, for showing us the way to go. Okay? So that was one of my. Actually, I got to be honest. I've enjoyed all the shows that we've actually done. Okay, that show, as well as the show that we did with Watts, following up on the. I'm going to end up talking about them all, sis. But the follow-up show that we did with Watts, where we got a chance to actually ask him questions specifically with regard to the new 2020 racial inequality report. And we got a chance kind of to ask him whether or not there had been any progress from the 2010 Racial Inequality Report. And we followed up the week after that, pressing him even a little bit further with his own project that he had in terms of him submitting content or information to the legislator demanding resources, that resources be spent down there on the west side of Charleston, one of the state's largest black communities. I am correct in saying that, am I not, in saying that the west side of Charleston is one of the state's largest black communities? If not, is that correct, Crystal?
I think that's what the census data shows. It's a concentrated area for African Americans in West Virginia. But other parts of the state are the demographics are shifting. One of the things that's so tragic about West Virginia is just our overall loss of population, and I think that was one of the things that that Pastor Watts was sharing when he spoke with us on the follow-up show, was how West Virginia doesn't have any in migration, meaning people are leaving West Virginia, people are not coming into West Virginia, so that means that we're not curating a workforce.
Right.
And I thought that was something that kind of that stayed with me, and I listened in after that show. I listened in because I think they're virtual now, to a lot of the Workforce West Virginia, which is the state, the State Department. I listened into some of their open meetings and really just kind of started looking into what is Workforce West Virginia and what are these programs doing to reach the black community, but also, just what is the plan? What is the plan for West Virginia to create, a workforce? And I think that was one of the things that was so interesting about, what Benny was talking about, and a lot of his frustrations in there is that, there are people that don't always have access to the information, and it's not because the information is not there. You just have to know the right person to call, answer the phone to tell you about the program, and the same thing's true with like the right job program or the right housing program, and I think that's one of the things that's really, in doing all the shows, it shows me where the problem is, and it's an information gap. And so, we shouldn't be surprised that people are doing things across the state. We should just be surprised that we don't know about them. And that's what I really am hoping that we can try to solve, or at least be a conduit through showing up on Sunday evenings.
Absolutely. A follow-up to that, Crystal, is that the information, the podcast that you sent me today, the Appalachian podcast, that was unexpectedly brilliant. I gotta say that, right? Because generally we don't necessarily perceive Pittsburgh as part of Appalachia. Okay, we very rarely do we get reports where Pittsburgh, Morgantown, and are all connected with Appalachia. And I got a report from you that connected all the dots, right? And I was like, man, this is something else. I still got a question whether or not I actually heard what I heard. Who did that report? Do you know these people personally?
So, yeah, that's West Virginia Public Broadcasting is doing those reports, and there's a huge conversation. There's a whole nonprofit media structure that is just specifically targeted on Appalachia and Central Appalachia, and so Pittsburgh is always included in that narrative, and that's one of the things that I think Black folks are missing out on, and that is finding. Let me just put it to you this way: white folks really, really want to include Black folks in the Appalachian narrative. Okay, it's like they really, there is a reckoning there, because I believe that in the dominant white culture of Appalachia, they want to be seen as part of, the greater narrative of white America. And we know the stereotype of, quote unquote, the hillbilly Appalachian, the white hillbilly Appalachian, and all of those stereotypes. So, there is a effort, for that narrative to be inclusive of Appalachia. So what I'm saying is, I think that, John, it's like literally it's like a stream that I've, like, there's so much content that is coming out right now about Black Appalachia, but there's very few Black Appalachians creating the content.
Now, Crystal, let me stop you right there and tell you. I've mentioned before that I've worked here in Morgantown up under Professor Ed Cabell. You may know the name, you may not know the name.
Yes.
But Professor, he used to be he's from down there in the lower portion of the state. And he had moved to Morgantown, and he had been living here for some time. He used to be a professor over at Fairmont State. He ran the John Henry Museum. And that was one of the things that he wrote on. He specifically wrote on the invisible history of African Americans in Appalachia. He connected the experience of West Virginia, of Black West Virginians. He referred to us as being invisible, and it was his attempt to connect us on to Appalachia. Where he explained it to me that by connecting on with Appalachia, we would have a larger pool of Black people to pull from instead of just being limited to West Virginia.
Yeah.
And Miss Amy Parks, she also co-signed that. I got to be honest, I was a little slow to get on that because I actually grew up north of Pittsburgh, outside of Youngstown, Ohio. I'm West Virginia, but I really wasn't aware of some of the Appalachia history or the Appalachia rhetoric, and didn't feel necessarily good about it because, again, like you said earlier, when you think of Appalachia, you think of the poor hillbillies, Kentucky, Hatfields and McCoys, that kind of thing. So it's not something that I necessarily felt comfortable embracing. So
and I think a lot of people don't. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't, but that's sort of where I've spent a lot of my academic time and in a lot of those conversations. And, one thing that I find is just a critique, and I actually made the critique today on that podcast to the producers of the podcast and have been somewhat critical of other publications, Appalachian publications, when they bring the Black and Appalachian narrative. And I want to be careful saying Black and Appalachia because there's a beautiful, wonderful podcast called Black and Appalachia that these two beautiful sisters from Tennessee are producing, and it's first class. I mean, it's called Black and Appalachia. I encourage anyone listening to download it and listen to those stories. They haven't reached into the West Virginia Appalachian part yet, but they're just getting started. So one of the things in my journey in sort of the academic side of Black and Appalachia and that narrative is that it is because it is so how about, let me just start here, John. You remember when Pastor Watt said that even when the white people get it wrong, speaking about journalists, that we're just happy to be included in the narrative? And what I'm seeing now about a lot of content coming out, even that particular piece that I shared with you that came out today on Inside Appalachia about racism in Appalachia, that they tied up with such a pretty bow, John. I have read article after article after article after article, and every article ends with the people were singing "I love you." There was no nonviolence. There was whatever. It has to end on this very, like the white people, the black people are holding hands and singing this very, tied up with a pretty bow. And I don't understand this, but I do understand this. I understand that this is, this makes this is just, that there is such a stereotype of the region that when these publications are actually being, trying to change the narrative of the region, that it's very important for them to end stories about racism on a very kumbaya note. And I think that stinks. And even the article that I just shared, it ends with, but the people were screaming racial and slurs at us, but then we started saying I love you back. And that was important for that to be included into that story as the ending, right? I'm not saying that that should be omitted. I'm saying that to tie it up, and that's not the only one. I've got a whole, I'm keeping them because I'm going to be speaking here soon to a group of students in California about this subject, and I'm going to be getting their input on it. But I find that every article written in context of racism in Appalachia ends with a pretty bow. John, what do you think about that?
Right. So, well, to be clear, and I'm feeling you're saying that the article ends off with it's not perfect, but we've made progress, and there's not necessarily a protest. There's not an angry protest because we're making progress. And the black people in West Virginia realize that they're living a better quality of life today than what they might have lived 30 years ago. So there is progress. And I like the fact that you did say, you didn't say it specifically, but it is necessary to give a platform to a protest, to those who protest everything. As you said, everything's wrapped up into a nice, pretty bow. We're all getting along, and so I try to do that with the Shabazz report. I try to keep it balanced to the extent that, yes, we'll go out and review black businesses in the area, try to give them some love. I got to do more of that because I see more of those popping up here in this area in north central West Virginia or in the upper Monongahela River Valley. I see more and more African-American women specifically doing their own business. I ain't a hater. I'm a player, you know what I'm saying? So I like it when the sisters do business, okay, because they represent at least one half of our community, okay? So I'm not hating on black women. I'd like to be able to see, and there are black men in the upper Monongahela River Valley doing business as well, okay? Shout out to those brothers, specifically my man Art with the computer shop downtown and his other brothers. I can't think of their names at this particular time. But again, we try to do a balanced perspective, you know what I mean, Crystal, right? And so that's one of the things that I like that Black by God, the West Virginian, is doing. Okay, so it's our job to be able to do some marketing and get everybody on board with what we're doing, and I think we're going to come along just fine.
Yeah, and I'm kind of finding my place that, you know, my main objective with this is to bring in, you know, as many people as I can to connect with each other and, you know, create the platform. Because one, for instance, that story that I shared on Inside Appalachia, racism in Appalachia, came out today. I guess I should tell folks what the date is in case they listen to the 13th, 2020. That's an important article. But what's also important is that we think about how we're framing things. And what I think is the most important thing, that white journalists and these white-led and owned and operated media outlets, the stories that they need to be telling are to the predominantly white culture on how racism affects them. I have yet to read this article anywhere. And I think that because every lens, and if you get it through that podcast a little more, it will tell you, it gives Delegate Danielle Walker's story in her voice. And
I did hear
and, you know,
I did hear that. I did get that far.
And that's it's important, and I want her voice to be heard, and all others, you know, their personal narratives. But I think sometimes what we forget is what that does to a predominantly white audience is it makes the problem over there, right? And I don't think anyone is connecting racism to what does that mean for you? What have you lost? What has West Virginia lost through, you know, this history of America, and how does racism affect the white people And I think that that's where journalists and other people need to be exploring. And I think I think West Virginia is very dangerous in that regard because it's very easy for the well-meaning white people, the liberals that show up to, the Black Lives Matter protests, that buy the T-shirt, that want to support different causes, and will applaud Danielle Walker and sign her petition and give her money as an example, and other Black organizations and groups, and see themselves as very well-meaning and not, quote-unquote, racist. But what happens is that they are comparing themselves to a genuine evil. And I just think that there's room, in between the two, that racism perhaps comes on a spectrum. So for what I'm saying is that because the Trump narrative, the rebel flags, all of these sort of like markers for who the racism are very prevalent and extreme in West Virginia, that if you're not that, then you must be okay. And what I'm saying is that is not how I see things. I see a lot of responsibility and change and opportunity in the demographic to stop pointing at the people over there and take ownership over what you can do in your friend circle, your media publication, your own personal growth. So,
I sent you an article. Well, I sent you a video where Michael Imhotep of the African History Network, he, I think it must have been like about maybe a year ago, he did a podcast where he specifically talked about the amount of money, the trillions of dollars that had been lost as a result of systemic racism and how it impacted white people, given a false history, a false sense of entitlement as a result of years and years of ingrained racism. And I think you and I have talked about that a little bit. And again, there's some work to be done on our part because, for instance, even with my own personal self, it's necessary for many of us to have a status correction. When I say a status correction, I use myself as an example. We found out that my great-great-grandmother was a Pamunkey Indian. We had always, because she was dark, we had always presumed that she was an African, a Negro. But we find out she's a Pamunkey Indian from Virginia. Well, if she's a Pamunkey Indian for Virginia, we got to be claiming Aboriginal rights into a certain class, a certain status or entitlement. A large portion of the so-called blacks in West Virginia are not just black people; they're indigenous black people. Okay.
Yes.
And that's an issue that on the national people are looking at it from. When I say the national, the grassroots national people, it's necessary for us to do a status correction and correct that. Because even though we look at Africa, we have a strong strain that comes from Africa. We're right here. Right here on America, okay? So, it's necessary oftentimes to claim where you're at. No diss to Africa because that's ours too. The whole planet was black people at one time. And I think a whole new definition, this new information needs to come out, and Caucasians, white people just need to accept that which the wise among them have already known and kept it hidden.
And to that, the podcast I was mentioning, Black in Appalachia, they just did a show on this. It's Black in Appalachia, Freedom of the Five Civilized Tribes. And it breaks it down about how this region, was, the tribes that lived here, but then also the complexities that involved in that because, not only some Indian tribes, were enslaved people. And enslaved, African people. And so there's a lot of complexity, but I love that this conversation is being, talked about more than I think I've ever heard it. Because kind of like you, everybody just sort of, it's not really it's not a good hair, bad hair kind of thing in Appalachia, but you've always know that there's some indigenous, at least most black families I know talk about, their grandmother was some type of quote unquote Indian is the language that was used. But yeah, Black in Appalachia, Freedom of the Five Civilized Tribes. They just put that content out, and they talk about the relations between this particular story. It's really good and fascinating.
Okay. All right. Now, there were some other shows that we also did that I mentioned. I mentioned that I liked Ice Cube's show and the shows that we did with Watts, detailing the racial inequality report. But when I look back at what we've done, I guess our first show, I guess we got to talk about that. You know what I mean? The first show is probably one of the most important shows because you detailed what actually motivated you to do Black by God, to get in contact with me, and that was the loss of Queen Mother, Sister Warrior Amy Rose Parks, one of my mentors here in Monongahela County, Fairmont. She had been part of welfare rights back in the day, and we lost her in August. And she had made it to 80 years old, but you took time to go over the file that we had in the Shabazz report on Sister Amy Rose Parks, and you were impressed with her words. And as you mentioned at that time, I could probably hand it over to you and let you specifically speak on that. But I was impressed that you contacted me and said, let's go ahead on and do this on whatever level that we can do it. And I think Miss Amy Rose Parks would be very proud to know. I told you this before. I think she would be proud to know that her words motivated you. Her words motivated us.
Yes, she did. And so, Black by God is a work in progress. This platform is one. All the things I'm working on to try to create a professional, quality media platform. And I go through a lot of anybody trying to build a business in West Virginia, is faced with a certain amount of challenges. Just literally the lack of resources, lack of capital, and also being sort of lack of intellectual capital. Meaning, I could tell you the entrepreneurship, folks that I've talked to that really don't understand about building a media platform, or they hear that I'm doing something Black and they want to introduce me to the one Black person that they know doing business. And I can find a lot of reasons to not do this or to not try. But when I was listening to Sister Amy Parks, what she was trying to leave in this world so that message can be carried on, that's when I found sort of, the roots of what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to do it. And this is part of the doing. And I think that's when I heard her voice say, don't be scared. Don't be scared. And also, the fact that she was Black before she was anything else. And that Black people in West Virginia have something very powerful to tell this world. And we have stories that, just to use that old coal metaphor, that are just, buried in there. When I think about her being the daughter of a Black union organizer who could never have held the position as president, right, because of racism within the union. When I hear the stories of the Black men that she told, of the Black men being armed by the company with, the handles of axes so that they could defend themselves against the white coal miners who were on strike, and how these Black men and white coal miners, went to battle in a place called Axe Hill, and why it was named that. And those are the stories that, are important that we archive, but those are also the stories that we have to bring into consciousness of today. So when I'm hear a story like that, right? And then I watch what happens a lot of times in the Appalachian narrative, this big kumbaya. I keep using the word kumbaya, but this really feel-good narrative of, how all the coal miners, everybody came out of coal mines, everybody was black. All this nonsense that we just all get along. That's not true. That's not true.
Right.
Black people in West Virginia have always had it harder than the white folks, and we know that the white folks have had it harder. But the difference, I think, is, and the stories that I'm excited to tell, which is also what Sister Amy Park sewed into me, is the level of excellence, right? The level of community, the level of togetherness, the level of, looking out for each other and holding each other accountable. And that's one of the things that, I feel is missing in today's a little bit of what I remember, coming up through West Virginia State, being still what I think is a HBCU, and
right.
those generations of people that are gone. And so there's so many traditions that are gone, even the traditions of the young folks having a dance, to go to
right.
that was just their own. A lot of these traditions are gone, but I think we have to reimagine them, and Black by God is a part of trying to reimagine what does it look like if I can create, and we can create, a platform for the storytellers and the artists and the people that care about the history and the people that care about, people getting information that's important can find a place, and I think that we can do that if we
right.
If we
right.
connect with each other, and
absolutely.
that's really why, so thankful that Leisha Lee came on, and that we got to talk to Martise Washington about the hood news, and what do people in West Virginia think about the quote unquote news, and how can I help,
Right.
So John, I think.
I want to add on to what you said and say that, for instance, Fairmont, West Virginia has Dunbar High School, which needs some money, needs some help in getting restored, and it's been sitting there, and it's one of the old high schools that, after slavery, black people took it upon themselves to build their own schools. Okay. The first one, I didn't know this because I partly grew up in Pennsylvania, but the first one was built in Parkersburg, okay? And then they started proliferating throughout the state. Parkersburg, Fairmont, Wheeling, this over here, over there. And I think that's a hidden story that hasn't really been told, how right after slavery, the black people had a lot of self-reliance to build their own schools. And many of those schools, quickly, for instance, many of those schools, some of those schools should be marked as historic landmarks. And, for instance, Dunbar High School is not marked as a historic landmark where it can get resources, and it should be, okay? And we have other scenarios where local developers have taken black schools and not given that specific assignment, that specific designation where they can get resources as a monument to the history of West Virginia. People with money come in and buy that stuff up. I think we should not allow that. We should stop that, shut that down, and go around and be able to identify these historic African American landmarks, whether it be a historic African American church, whether it be a historic African American coal mining community that existed and now it's disappeared, because we have those here in this area. My family is a coal mining family. But, so, to get back, Black by God, it presents the opportunity to put people on notice that we got some work we need to do. If I don't get it done, you don't get it done. It's a generation coming behind us. If we give them the information, maybe they can get it done.
Yeah, because, the Charleston, Charleston has done a good job of preserving the old black school in the Triangle District, and I think it's called the African American Heritage Group has been working on preserving those sites and has been successful. And so there is a model there
they've been able to get resources and go out and identify African American heritage sites in the Charleston area. Is that correct?
I mean, they've done it the traditional way, which is just, not the traditional way, but the, working with the county and the city to get the markers, to get them designated as historic, and then to get them marked as whatever the other designations are. But yeah, and that's the African American. Dadgummit, trying to think of his name, but shoot, I can see his name, but I mean I can see his face. He's worked on this for so long. Oh, West Virginia Center for African American Art and Culture, and so they have been around a long time. So, that may be someone that, Fairmont, or I don't know if Fairmont has a connection there, but I knew that they were a statewide agency and that they had been worked. It's a Black-led nonprofit, but it's the West Virginia Center for African American Arts and Culture, and and they would certainly be someone that has already done it.
Or is it?
No,
it's
not
Anthony
Kinzer.
I've heard. You know what?
Yeah,
that's what I thought it was. I've been in contact with him years ago when he was just in a little office. Did he ever get a building?
I'm not sure that. Well, they're in the People's Building, but I mean, he's got a great board. He's got Miss Miss Chlorine Carter, Miss Kathy Ferguson. She just ran for office. Mike Jones, Miss Deidre Key Switzer, Mrs. Jean Lamb, and Mr. Richard Wolf on the board. And so, since they've done this project, well, I don't know if he's grown, but he's always worked off of this. He's always been a nonprofit, but he would. This group would be someone to reach out to because they've done the historic preservation for the block, and I know that this was not an easy job. I know that it took years to get those designations, and so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good model. I got to check into that model because it's a model that already exists.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like I really feel like a lot of what is missing is, and that's why I'm trying to put some thought and some tech behind it in terms of how do we start to connect these groups, right? Because it's almost as if, there really is nothing new under the sun. It's just a matter of finding, the right resources and the people that can help, move an idea through or get an idea on in momentum. And I think that's our great distraction in West Virginia. We don't have meeting places as we did in the past. Population is getting smaller. We're very siloed in terms of who's doing what over here, over there, and I really, I don't know. I only know sort of the generation and the era that I was involved a lot in, and there's young people doing stuff. I don't know, John. I'm excited to see what we can do here on Sunday nights, just being consistent and showing up, but also like how can we, just start connecting people to each other, because that story, I could write the story about Fairmont High School. You can make the video, right? And then, how do we get that information, in digestible, when I say digestible, in ways that people consume content. Not everybody's going to sit down and listen to an hour talk show. Not everybody's going to, read an article, right? So I think our strongest ways of reaching as many people is to get as many people involved. That's it. And then let the people do what the people do.
Now, Crystal, I've dealt with that in terms of how to get your message out, okay? And I found out, for instance, when we was organizing for the Hate Crimes March back in 2007, I told Attorney Malik Shabazz, I said, look here, I just got finished seeing half of the state gravitate to Huntington. All the black community, the young people gravitate to Huntington to go down here to see a concert, a rap concert. And I've been out here beating the horn, beating the drum, trying to get people's attention. But a rap concert come to down, and people running up on me, asking me if I'm going to take off work to go to this concert. I told him specifically, you got to entertain and educate people at the same time. When I went through the AmeriCorps program, I witnessed the trainers using a sophisticated blend of education and mixing and entertainment. They train you, then in the middle of the training, they'd stop and sing to you. And they were pretty good singers. There's something about mixing education and entertainment together that some black people go for, like a rap video.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I think America goes for it. You know, I'm excited. I'm going to be working with a rapper, Shalem, here soon. He's going to be creating some content for Black by God. And also, I just want to give a shout out too to Shank Daddy, because he does this really great podcast, mixing comedy, you know, and he's a brother from Bluefield, that's out of Huntington. And so, you know, they get together. You should, you know, give him a listen, John, because, you know, it's real talk over there. And, you know, they're connecting.
Give me his name again. Give me his name again. Shank Daddy.
And he's on all the platforms, and Black by God is, you know, working out how we can help support what he's doing. But, you know, and that's the thing, John. This is where I'm so excited about what I know I can do, and that is create a thread, you know, for people. So, you know, Shank Daddy's doing his thing. All the rappers, Leisha Lee's doing her thing. You're doing your thing. Hood Reports. We're all doing our thing, you know, and I think that we bring such a different, you know, voice if we can find the space, you know what I mean, and just keep networking with each other and, you know, amplifying each other, you know, because it doesn't matter how much I say to or that Pastor Watt says to or that, you know, Benny or any of us when we have a complaint because about the way something's going on in our world or our community when we're not standing in unity. And I think the greatest unity and opportunity that we have in West Virginia is to create a really strong black media presence, because then we can get information out, we can educate people, we can celebrate each other, and we can know who each other is. You know, and I think that that's really, you know, where some of the old school methods and ways of community that we especially don't have now because of Corona, you know, we don't have the big family reunions here even anymore. A lot of times people go to a city to do their family reunions, right? I mean, you know, the whole, go ahead.
No, I was getting ready to tell you, I do my family reunion, okay, and we do it started out, we have a blended family, and in our first family reunion, I didn't put it together. My auntie, who passed here in 2018, she fought for it. Called me up on the phone and said, "Look, John, I want to do a family reunion," and she asked for my support, and I gave her my support and began to help her orchestrate it. And they put it together, her and my mother, you know. And again, it was the first one was in 2015, and we do one every year. Well, initially it started out every other year, and we would switch from, we would say 1 year it would be in Fairmont. The first year was in Fairmont. Then we'd switch up, say, and go to Columbus. The third year, they go to Norfolk, Virginia. But it's important. It is important to do your family reunions. It's important to do your yearly community events, because we also do the Juneteenth. And and it's so important that we do. We skipped last year. We skipped the Juneteenth. We don't plan on skipping Juneteenth this year. We're not going to skip it 2 years back to back. Okay. Same thing with family reunions. You got to do those. Why? People are getting older. Imagine being older and all the old. Imagine being an older person and you're the last one out of your brothers and sisters, and everybody's gone, but you're still here. I would say that you want to do certain things to make the older people, the elders, feel like they're valued, where they don't want to just pick up and go. If they feel they're not valued, they might just want to leave early and say, well, I'm not valued. Everybody else is gone that I know, or there's nobody to talk to. I'm out of here. So, you know, so we, the events are important.
Yeah, and I'm just suggesting, you know, that we find ways to network with each other, and I'm hoping Black by God can be that, you know, to kind of create that online version of community. And also, it's very important, and I've said this before, you know, that we just not staying dependent on one platform. That means it's not all about Facebook. It's not all about, you know, because we know how quickly when one of those platforms disappears, you know, that we're at a disadvantage. We're suddenly in a scramble, you know, and that's one of the things I think about is I not understand, but, you know, kind of look at technology and how it moves, right? And some of the, you know, what's free ain't always free, you know. So I think
Crystal,
we take that.
Crystal, I seen online, I got to ask you this. I know Facebook is under a lawsuit right now, and somebody asked, one of my sister friends asked me about it, right, or mentioned it to me. I don't know the specific details of it, but I know they're under a government lawsuit, and they're talking about breaking it up, right? From what I understand. Have you seen any articles in reference to it?
There's a lot of articles out there about Facebook and the monopoly, and, you know, it's pitching itself as not a media company. It's selling your data. One of the things that I would love to talk about here on Black by God is a company that I invested in, and it's called Streamalytics. And Streamalytics is owned by Angela Benton. She's a Black woman, and she's great. She's got a long resume of being in the tech world, which alone is, you know, it shouldn't be as unique as it is. But so she's developed a company called Streamalytics, and it's a company where I get paid for my data, and you can get paid for your data. And anybody listening can get paid for their data. That means that when you participate on these platforms, they are selling your data. YouTube sells your data. Well, I don't want to start naming names, but, you know, most companies that you engage with online are selling your data, and you don't think about this. You don't think about the fact that your data, your digital imprint, is literally what you search, the video that you watch after the video that comes on YouTube, what you're posting on Facebook, there's so many different data points. And what Streamalytics does is takes that power back, and so you get paid for your data. So, you know, and that's something I think about. I've done a couple of talks about this with you know, just on the value that you should own your data. And I think that West Virginians can understand this when I put it, and I try to put it in this metaphor of coal, right? So if you mine the coal, you want paid for it, right? You want paid for that coal before it gets on the train and leaves, right? But we don't think that way about our data and our digital footprint, right? We give Facebook and we give all these companies all of this information about us, about our habits, about what we like, about what we don't like, about our speech patterns, about our health, everything. And those companies sell that information. The future is in data. The future is big data. These resources that we have are you know, vision of coal or, you know, other natural resources that can no longer be mined by, you know, the machine can do that. You know, we're moving into a different generation. So what I'm saying is it's important for people to know about the world of data, and it's especially important for Black people to pay attention to data. It's not that complex when you start getting curious about it and think about ways that you can be paid for your data, because you're giving it away for free. You're giving it away for free. So
the two sisters that you mentioned that you spoke to last week, they did a survey. They were collecting data based upon that survey, but the largest portion of that survey information was done on the Kanawha County, Cabell County area. Would you say it was done in the Charleston, Huntington area?
Well,
most part.
it tried to break out. I think it was probably, over 50%. Yes.
Right, right. And now I just wanted to mention that because last year in 2019, I did the lecture in front of the WVU at the School of Journalism, and I was working with that woman, Mary Kay McFarland, the journalism professor. She was collecting data on African American communities because I think she had received a grant, and she asked me for assistance in getting contact people. And Miss Amy is gone now, so I might as well declassify it and let it out. She told me, she said, John, what are you doing? We're supposed to be working on reparations, and you off with some white. Do you even know if she got any blacks in her class? She put me in check. She gave me a good tongue lashing on that. She said, you got to go back and check that. And then for that reason, that was why I had the interview with Mary Kay McFarland and sat down, because Miss Amy was like, nah, man, you did. There's been a break in the trust here. You can't really trust them. She's getting money, and you helping her. She's getting money, and you ain't getting a dime. That's the way Miss Amy looked at it. She looked at it as that I was being exploited, and it was her job to put me on notice. Don't be exploited like we've been exploited in the past.
I mean, I think that we have to think of that in every time. I mean, it's. I mean, I certainly feel like I've been exploited over and over again by, people that want my story or want my presence or need, a specific quota or whatever makes them feel better. But I think the specific type of data exploitation that I'm talking about is something that Black folks don't talk about, because Facebook is so convenient. Right? And so the fact that your data is being sold and shared, and literally algorithms are being created, based off of that are, it's sort of the repeat, it's like, I don't know, John, I'll tell you what, I'd love to talk about this in context of a show. That way I could maybe put it together a little bit and share what my beliefs are and how I look at, our data that's being sold and shared, which is a little different than I think, I did a survey.
Okay.
I don't sell that data to, to a big company, right? But everything that we do, everything that you do on Facebook is being sold. And I don't understand why this doesn't cause uprising in people, right? And I think it doesn't cause uprising because we're so conditioned for the benefit, right? The benefit of Facebook is that it makes you feel connected. It gives you things. It gives you, validation. I don't know how many people have said, I can't quit Facebook. How else would I talk to my mother or my cousin or somebody? And I don't know how we got along for hundreds of thousands of years before Facebook, but somehow we did. And I think that if we're going to be there, and I really, it's called Streamalytics is the company that you can participate in and get paid for your data. And this is not network marketing, okay? This is very far from it. But there's also a lot of things called, if you start to look up, Black Data Matters. And these ideas are very much connected, or Data for Black Lives. These ideas are very much connected to one thing I'd love for us to talk about, too, is universal basic income. And I don't know how much you've invested in studying that, but I'd love to come back and make one of our shows about universal basic income.
But we have to get clarity
and even,
hold on, Chris. We got to get clarity on that particular phrase. Universal basic income. Now, when I hear that, I think you're thinking about one basic income, a standard income for all Americans, okay, a standard living income for all Americans. Are we talking about that or something along those lines? You have to clarify exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, I think universal basic income kind of came into, folks when Andrew when Andrew Yang ran for president. So universal basic income, it means that everybody gets a check for $1,500, as an example. Everybody. That's just what you get to live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And and
monthly.
that's because
you get
we're
that
moving.
1,500 monthly.
You just
You get that
doesn't matter how
monthly.
rich you are, doesn't matter how poor you are. It's universal basic income. It's and part of that is because we are moving away from the quote unquote jobs. Meaning, what are we going to do, right? Fast food jobs are, an actual human working in Wendy's is necessary in the future, and the future is very near. A robot can cook your food and hand it to you out of a window. So then we have a whole class of people. Yes, that's already happening. So we have a whole class of people.
I've heard people talk about that. Excuse me, not to interrupt. I haven't seen. I haven't actually seen any robots. Okay, I've heard that robots are coming, but I haven't actually seen robots yet. And I'm the kind of guy until I actually see a robot up in Burger
Well, I'll
King.
send you a video, John. I'll text it to you when we get off here of the robot because I'm in Los Angeles right now. The robot that delivers your food. It's like R2D2. It just comes down the street and it delivers your food. It delivers it's R2D2 down the street. Like we're there.
Oh man, don't do it, sister. Don't do it to me, right? I know you're out in Cali. But you send me that. That's gonna be too much. That might be too much.
We're there, and
well,
so I think a lot of our thinking, which is why I love the whole concept. So anyway, I guess what I'm doing, John, is I'm saying the things that I'd like to talk about coming up are, Black people in data and technology. I'd like to talk about universal basic income, and I'd like to talk about Afrofuturism, because I think that these are three areas that that are pretty national conversations. Data for Black lives, universal basic income, and how, reimagining the future through, Wakanda was a huge hit, and that's sort of how do we reimagine a future where Black people are, the
quality of life, they have a higher quality of life, for instance. The whole Wakanda thing.
Yeah, and I don't think in West Virginia we even start to process this a way of I'm just going to wrap up my thoughts on this little one thing. So a lot of the work that I've been doing with Black by God is just talking to different business people, looking at different business models, just working on the back end, and a lot of people that I truly trust and respect in West Virginia said, nothing in West Virginia for Black people is meant to succeed. So if you're trying to go a grant route, if you're trying to go a grant route or a nonprofit route, it's not meant to be successful, right? There's so much XYZ money that comes into the state that people have to meet a certain check mark. They have to serve a certain amount of Black people or minorities, but that minority is mostly white women in Appalachia. That's how they, get that designation as an underserved community. And so I was really encouraged. That wasn't a discouraging statement. The encouraging statement was what I hear from you all the time in these shows, which is how do we just build our own, right? So how do we build a thing where we're not dependent on somebody else, right? I'm not dependent on, a grant or the benevolence of, people that write the State of Inequality in West Virginia type organizations. Not that I'm dismissing that, but I'm saying, can we not create our own power within what we have? And I think that goes back to what we kind of opened up the conversation, that Black people in West Virginia have to connect to a larger group of Black people in America or the world, right, in order to survive. And I think in order to do that, we have to find issues that are maybe a little bit different than the ones that we've been talking about. And I believe in technology, and I think that that's a space that I'd like to use our Sundays to talk about.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Afrofuturism, and I did become aware of a term called futurism, but I'd have to ask you for clarity on that. Futurism meaning looking at data and projections in terms of trying to project the future, looking into the future and looking at stats and so forth. I hope I'm getting it right.
Yeah, I mean, they can be there's that, but Afrofuturism is very imaginative. It's a genre of looking at the world, right? So the whole "Make America Great Again." There's a perfect example, right? What part of America again do Black people want to go to, right? Like, what part of that? There's no "Make America Great Again" that we want to go back to. There's no period of American history, right? But we don't know what's in the future. And if the future, one of the opportunities that I think that this generation has is, is to embrace technology and to start to look at the future of what that holds. And, so anyway, just give it a Google. And I can send you some things to think about. It's more of a genre than it is a sort of like economics philosophy or anything.
Right. Now, if you, for instance, in this state, if you could get Black people focused on solar panels and solar energy, that's something that's coming through, despite the fact that the state has a history in coal mining and a lot of its money was made there, and it's old people that have been in positions for a minute. They don't want to give up coal because those that are in power, they stay in power up under that. But if you switch over to this solar energy, this greenhouse energy, it provides opportunity for a new generation of people maybe to come in and assume power, resources, and so forth. So you understand what I'm saying? That was one of the things that I think the Republicans didn't like about Obama, because he threatened to shut down fracking and go heavier on solar energy and windmill energy, so-called renewable energy. Yeah.
I mean, Obama did do a whammy on the coal-fired power plants, but I think one of the folks I could reach out to that would be happy to come on and talk with us is an inventor from West Virginia, and his name is Mr. Moss, not related to Randy Moss, but he is an inventor, and he has invented a fusion technology, which is something that nobody ever talks about. I mean, which is nuclear power. And to just know, and I'll send you his information. I mean, let's just think about this, John. There is a brother from West Virginia who has invented, right, a nuclear power process through fusion. Okay, and one of the things is that he's working on also is to, like, how could he bring that back to West Virginia to start to support science and technology thinking in young people. So the whole energy resource plan for West Virginia and how Black people are included in it, that doesn't exist. But even just the idea that out in the world there is a Black man who has invented fusion, right, technology, and Samuel Moss is his name, and I mean he's it's. I want to learn. You know what I mean? I want to learn from Samuel what that means. His website is called fusionandgravity.com, and we talk about solar, we talk about wind. West Virginia never is there conversations about nuclear power or just any other alternative resource. So what I'm saying
NASA
is these bigger ideas.
I know I was going to share with you that NASA up here in the Upper Monongahela River Valley, here in Clarksburg, they're doing some work with robotics, and I think Amelia Parks' children, I think her son, is in some special class where they teaching him about robotics, and he's got an advanced start on that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Amelia and her husband were pressing for NASA to open the door to fund a program to teach African American children about robotics, give them a head start. Essentially, I forgot to mention that when you were talking about the robot at McDonald's. So they're
yeah.
So something else that I want to tell you about.
Go ahead.
Something else I want to tell you about is that about maybe 2 years ago, I spoke with Professor Phil Carter down at Marshall, and he had invited me to the NAACP. They had their conference meeting in Clarksburg, and he made sure that I got in. If it don't be for him, I don't get in there. But he invited me. But after it was over, he and I had a talk, and he says, John, I got a program where we're working on it. We're going to demand that the legislator appropriate X and X amount of money specifically to go to black business. Not going through the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs, no. Come specifically for the development of black businesses throughout the state. Something like 1,000 or 2,000 of them throughout the state as a way of directly addressing the racial and economic disparities. Now I haven't heard back from Phil on that. Haven't heard back from Phil on that specifically. Okay, it was an idea that he dropped about 2-3 years ago, and he said he had to put it to the NAACP and other people that were in a position to invest in it, to embrace the idea. But I seen that as him recognizing that we have to do something to pool our resources amongst the population that we have. He identified the state's population at that time at about 65,000 black people in the state. And I'm asking you, is that a legitimate figure that he gave me back 3 years ago in terms of the total black population within the state, 65,000?
I think, 55, 56, probably less. I think, it changes. One of the things, but it's 50, I think we have to look at the new census data, but I think, it's around 56,000 there. And, the thing is with the black businesses, we have so much money through the federal set-aside programs that people don't even access, There's a lot of money in West Virginia for people to access through the minority set-aside programs.
Well, you got to have, now in order to get that minority set-aside, in order to get that minority set-aside program money, do you have to be a 501? See, I think that might.
You just have to go through the classes. You don't have to be 501c3. It's like, you just have to really work through a lot of systems, and it's not easy, but that is like, if you look at where wealth happens, wealth is created through a lot of these federal programs. And you know what? You might have to take the money and build a prison. I know people that do that, right?
Hold on.
You
didn't say take some money and build a prison. You didn't say that, did you?
That's what a lot of there are black contractors, yes, and that, if you get a federal set aside money, right, you might have to build a federal building, and that federal building could potentially be a prison. So, I'm just saying when you start to deal with the federal government, I'm not the expert in this. I don't really have an interest in this, but I know that this is one way that people build wealth, right? And they do it through, and then it's something that is not, that black folks don't do in West Virginia in terms of all of the federal contracts set aside and go through all that. But the white women do, right? The white women as minority set aside do. And one of the things that really just stuck out with me about, Pastor Watts is that, it's so true. We just keep starting over, it's like you just keep starting over. I think about all the black business programs that I've been involved in, and then they just start all over. I think about, like all of these classes and this organization and that organization, and this person wants to do this idea and that idea, and I'm not saying that, but I don't see any consistency. I'm a black person in West Virginia trying to start a business, and I can't get the resources and the help that I really need, because when you start to deal with a business, it's more of an intellectual property kind of vision, right? It's very hard for people, I think, to give you the guidance that you need, you know? So I think what's very frustrating for a lot of people is that we have ideas, but then when we start to structure those ideas, we don't always have the resources in the room to help us structure the idea. And that, to me, is a great loss, meaning, you know, everybody should have a business, you know, doing something. But a lot of times, you know, if your business doesn't fit, what do you want to do? A barbershop, a restaurant, a retail place, you know? I think that I don't know if we have I don't know anybody that's done what I'm trying to do, right? So if I don't have anybody that's done what I'm trying to do, who's going to help me, right? That's just me venting a little bit, but.
Well, now here in the state, we don't necessarily have models, but outside the state, we do have models. The brother I was telling you about, Michael Imhotep from up in Detroit, he's done pretty good with that. He grinded up, and I see the same potential for what we're doing here with Black by God. As I mentioned to you some time ago, at some point,
you know what the hardest part is, John?
Yeah.
When I'm talking to people outside the state, they say it's only 56,000 black people. That's not enough. I mean, it's just a numbers game, right?
Okay. So we got 56,000 black people. We may be in a position to do this because we do the same thing with Black Unity Coalition. While we're headquartered in the state, we're not limited to the state. For instance, you know, we have a chief of staff that, you know, she's originally from the state, but she's not living here in the state. We got reps in Black Unity Coalition that started out in the state but left the state. So while we're headquartered in the state of West Virginia, we're not limited to the state of West Virginia, and so it's a West Virginia national organization. So Black by God, while being meant specifically for West Virginia, it can be linked into the national and as well as regional. I found it necessary, real quickly. I found it necessary back in 2019, last year, to complete my obligation to work on putting together a regional coalition. So that meant I would have had to go to D.C. and Pittsburgh and link up with activists that are there in that area. Let them know what we're doing. Give them a report. See what they're doing. I mean, it's talk, but it is the kind of things that we need to do. Go ahead, Crystal.
No, but you know, and my mission is to connect, you know, the news and the journalism and the stories and storytellers and those types of things. But what I find is that inside West Virginia, right, people can't necessarily find and network with each other. And then trying to take a West Virginia story, right, to a larger group, right? And you've certainly experienced this, John, working with, you know, national organizations. Let's just be real. Black folks outside of West Virginia don't necessarily care about what's happening to black folks in West Virginia, on a you know, unless it's a Megan Williams hate crime, right? So, you know, what I find is a lot of the narrative is, why are y'all still there, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are y'all still there? And and
go,
it's very hard. It's very hard to say, hey, listen, we're still here. We've got a lot of problems. Of course you've got problems. You know, we've got a lot of beautiful things. You know, got a history. You know, aren't you interested in our stories? And they're not interested in you know, just it's a difficult conversation. That's why I think we have to find, just like, you know, inside the state, we all need to be on one accord, working on one messaging, which is one thing that I love that Benny keeps talking about. Is like, man, our messaging sucks, right? Like, it does. Like, we don't have one thing that black folks are working on or collectively supporting each other on. And then in a national sense,
we got to get on code.
Yeah, and then on a national sense, those folks don't want to hear about us complaining about. I mean, I get it. That's why I think that our opportunity into a bigger conversation is around, technology and things that don't actually require our physical bodies to be bound to this location. Meaning, technology allows our children, mobility. They can stay in West Virginia or they can go.
Right.
And I think
No, I was just going to say to you that I think we're because of our numbers are low within the state. But when I take the opportunity to get on Black Power Radio on the national, I let them know that because of our numbers in the state, we're in a position to do something special. Yes, that's why I had to take the time to redefine what being in the state is really about. Remember I told you that one time I took time to research up underneath the official record, and I'm still doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I find some amazing things that when I research up underneath the official record, we find that there was a group called the Monongahela people in this area. You go down to the southern portion of the state, they're connected to the what is referred to as the Fort Ancient culture, which is the prehistory of so-called West Virginia. And even the word Fort Ancient is a word that was given to the culture by Europeans coming in. So we're in a position to redefine our reality and put people on notice that what you refer to as West Virginia is actually a de facto criminal state. Yeah, I know it's hard, but we have to be able to refer to the Europeans as invaders, right? And that might make somebody feel uncomfortable, but if you're going to deal with actual facts, let's deal with actual facts. And when you commit a crime, what happens? You got to pay for it. When you you steal something, you got to pay for that. See, and I really think spiritually that's part of the problem here in West Virginia. Okay, and I think now there are some. Listen, in my research, I find that there are some Europeans that recognize the truth, but recognizing the truth and actually doing something to atone for it is actually two different things. Recognizing the historical record has been altered or fixed up to an extent.
Well, one of my great surprises of 2020 is a friend of mine named Jeff James wrote a book called Giving Up Whiteness. He is a white man, and he was my former boss. And one day he said, "Crystal, what am I supposed to do about all these race problems in America and whatnot?" And I said, "Jeff, you just got to quit being white." And he went on a search. It's called Giving Up Whiteness. I'd be happy to send you the book, John.
I'm writing that title down, sis.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. And he'll be happy to come on and talk to us anytime. And I can get you a copy of that book. I can get anyone listening a copy of the book. It's
How many pages? How many pages?
Oh, I don't know. It's a full book. So I'm gonna send you a link to it. The first chapter is free online. You can read that. But it is literally the story of a white man trying to understand whiteness and how it moves in society. And he writes it from a position of being a white man from West Virginia and also from being a Christian man, and how a lot of times, white Christians think, well, I'll let the book speak for itself. And the first chapter is free. You can go read it. I'm gonna send you the link to it. But this
white
is the
Christianity is white privilege. Crystal, I was just saying, white Christianity is basically white privilege. That's what the evangelicals, they hold Trump up. They're his constituency, right? Yeah.
I think also on that Dave Bryson. I'm gonna send you this. I put Pastor Bryson's link to this op-ed he just wrote in the show notes from last show. But he had a great article that just came out about the Christianity and what white evangelicals, what that means to this oh, the title of
Today's
it is
environment.
called the title of it is called The Hypocrisy of White Evangelicals. I'll send you that also. I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, so I mean, so we got a few more minutes, John. What are we going to talk about next week?
Well, we could have talked about today the fact that they're gonna. Some people got some concerns about this vaccine. Okay, some of my Moorish brothers and sisters are concerned about it, and I've been watching the information that's been coming out on it as well. I watch Meet the Press, and I listen to NBC Nightly News to get a mainstream perspective. I listen to Hoppy Kercheval's Metro News Talk Line. He comes on every day from 10 to 12, Monday through Friday. I listen to him, and Rush Limbaugh comes on after him from 12 to 3. So I try to get a rounded perspective. But I think we might want to do an open line information. If we could find somebody, I think I'd asked you one time before about getting in contact with a black doctor. Initially, I was thinking about the sister down in Beckley, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get in contact with her. And if she has a husband, her husband might not feel good about me making direct contact with her. But I'd like to be able to get access to a black healthcare worker or a black doctor or a black professional, healthcare professional, and ask them some questions about what they think about the new vaccine. It's been fast tracked, and the media is promoting it as it's a wonder, but there are some concerns about it, and from what I understand, they want to direct it toward the black community. And black people are saying, some of the grassroots black people are saying, look, we already got bad history with you guys, right? And 8 months hasn't been long enough to test this thing out, and you want to use us as guinea pigs. So there's some concerns. I don't know how much information you have on it, Crystal, personally, and I have some information. I don't hardly know what to believe and what not to believe. Okay.
I mean, I think also I've been very fortunate that I get to participate in this other community with some of the leading black doctors that have been working on the vaccine and this other conversation on Clubhouse. And, I think there's a lot of misinformation all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And, and a lot of fear, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And I just think that, what keeps us, at least what I try to do, is I think a conversation that's useful. It's very useful, especially to people. Is how do you keep your mental state strong? How do you keep your body in optimum health? Just some of the basic healthcare.
Good point.
Conversations that we're not having about just having a healthy immune system and food systems and things like that. Because listen, when the vaccine comes and they tell you got to get it or you don't go to work, I don't know what to tell people. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the resources. I don't have the study. I don't have the inquiry. But what I do know is that, West Virginia has a high rate of diabetes. We have we're in a mental health crisis. Our children are suffering from trauma. I mean, we have things that we can control to a degree and open up conversations that might open up, our ability to, retain and process some of these more complex stories. I don't really necessarily I don't spend a lot of my time in the COVID research world because I just find I don't know where to start, and I don't want to misguide it. You know what I'm saying? Like you could bring on the top black doctor in America. We could talk to them, and then we'll find some grassroots people to say that they are, part of the problem. I just feel like, gosh, So, John, I'd love to, I think that what the central theme is there is we don't know who the black doctors are, and we don't know how to get in touch with them, and we don't know what Black doctors are saying in West Virginia about COVID. And I think that's where we just got to go back to, perhaps the COVID task force and maybe try to reach out to some of those folks to give us an update on what's going on in West Virginia.
The African American COVID task force. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There is one person. Hold on, Crystal. There is one, since you mentioned that. Tiffany Walker. I think the COVID task force started off with her because she worked at WVU and she had previously had a background working for United Way here in Mon County. As I recall, and I stand to be corrected, but as I recall, I think she was the contact person for the beginning of that African American COVID-19 task force because she worked for WVU and had contact with Marsh. Marsh is the fellow they put over top of the justice put over top of the COVID-19 work here in the state. You know what I'm talking about? Dr. Marsh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now Tiffany's one of my Facebook friends, and I think her and Ramelia and Danielle they're pretty cool. I think they actually make up that COVID-19 task force. I'm saying that without having actual facts on it, but I know that they've been working together. And I haven't heard too much from them in terms of giving a report on what's going on with the COVID-19 task force. So it may be an opportunity for us to holler back at Romelia and Tiffany and say, hey, you got some questions.
I mean, I think also, so
I have Romelia's contact number. I have Romelia's contact number. I'll holler at
I think also just a premature with, don't want to, because one of the things I find that happens a lot, and Pastor Watts brought this up too, is that a lot of people are doing the work. A lot of people are sharing the work. A lot of people are getting the information out there, but just that information isn't coming through to the people. Isn't coming down. Like the articles that are being written about the African American COVID task force might not make it across your timeline, so you don't know about it. And the Herb Henderson Office of Minority Affairs, they put out a report pretty often about what they're doing. So maybe maybe what could be helpful is if we take the time in our own journey to try to figure out what's going on with West Virginia. If we kind of think about, well, we're not the only ones, so who are people supposed to call, and where is this information being shared? Because I feel like the part of the problem is we are so dependent on knowing somebody, and if we don't know somebody, then we don't know, and it can't be like that,
Okay. Wow. There's been, despite the numbers, the climbing of the numbers, because recently I was watching, I think, NBC Nightly News, and I heard the reporter say that the numbers in COVID-19 deaths are supposed to rise higher than the deaths in 911 in every day. Daily totals. And I said, okay. Get a grip on yourself, because you have to be, like you said, you have to be stable mentally and emotionally. And there is things that you can do to take care of your health. For instance, getting rid of the mucus. Mucus, as far as my understanding, provides an environment for sickness to build up a mucus. Then this COVID-19, it attaches onto the mucus, from what I understand. Okay. Attaches onto the mucus in your nose, the mucus membranes in your nose, and goes from your nose down into your throat and builds a culture and goes, and it gets worse and worse. So there are certain things that you can do to take care of your health.
There are, and those are things I think that we could hope, we can talk about. And between now and then, I'll do my research on what's going on out in, we got a caller. Hold on, let me see. John, we got 34 seconds, and it's going to end. Let me see if I can change. Hold on, let's see here. Let's see. We got a caller here. Let me see. I want to see as someone who's hello. Do we have a caller? Hello? Let's see here. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear us?
How's everything going? This is Denny.
Hey, Benny.
Hey,
we
what's
was
going
just getting
on,
ready
bro?
to wrap. We was getting ready to wrap it up. Where are you?
I know we on the road, man. We just got back on the road, man. We was doing all the little pre-chip inspection and stuff like that. So I still wanted to call in and let y'all know, man, that I'm following y'all as much as I can, man. The whole situation, I'm praying for everybody, man. Everybody stay safe out there. We on this road. We being safe, man. Let's just get through this thing and make it on the other side, man,
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yes, sir. Hey, man, I want to tell you, I appreciate you. I told Crystal the show that we did with you was one of my favorite shows because I got a chance to know that there's somebody else within the state that was taking Ice Cube's program and making it happen on the local level. So, big props to you,
yes,
bro.
sir.
Get that cheese.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. It just, I like that contract with Black America because it goes into detail about what we need and what our problems and issues are and how we can solve them, So a lot of times people just say, like, well, okay, we know that there's this and there's that. Well, what can we do about it? We need a plan. And that plan, that contract really outlines everything, And all of the amendments support themselves. One supports the other.
Well,
you keep calling
we
in,
need to
bro.
do
I
a
want to be able to hear from you early in the report because I kind of look forward to hearing from you. You're on the move. You like a roving reporter.
Yeah, man, I am. You know what, man? Actually, I just got back from Miami, man. We driving. We dropping off right now. We just got back and picked up and dropping off something else. So, I have to focus on this because this is what I'm just starting out to do. This is how I get paid. So, but now I can spend a little bit more time creating content and calling in and engaging and stuff like that. But yeah, y'all my peoples, man. I'm with y'all 100 all day.
All right.
Thank
All right.
you. And we're getting ready to this show's going to shut off here as it does, but I just want to say when you're on the road, Benny, give this artist named Bia a listen. BIA, and you too, John. Bia, she's a female rapper, but you will recognize her producer because her producer Aziz has also given us this beat so generously that is our intro and our outro for Black by God, and I think it's probably about time. So thanks for calling in and listening. John, as always, appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much.
No doubt, sis. And you keep holding it down, doing what you do. No doubt. All right, peace, bro.